Welcome to Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help people to network and connect through their affinity relationships, whether it's college alumni, whether it's fraternal alumni, it could be business alumni associations and athletes. But what we've set out to do is the transition of athletes out of sports is a major issue today, whether it's mental health challenges, financial literacy, just knowing what to do. So the whole idea behind this show is to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. And we're so excited today to have Scott Gibbs on with us and talk a little bit about his journey through sports. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. So his background is he was a basketball player growing up. He went to Union College and played basketball there, and then went into the business world. That's something we're gonna kind of hone in on, just athletes in the business world and success they can have there, along with entrepreneurship. And then kind of worked his way up through different levels of engineering and sales, ultimately to executive leadership positions. And now he runs a very successful coaching business, working with executives and founders of companies. What we're going to talk about, I always ask, kind of starting out, kind of fun question is talk about growing up playing sports and how it shaped you, like say up through high school or into college.
Boy, I tell you, around seventh or eighth grade is when I really took a liking to basketball, and I knew at that point it was going to be a lifelong game. I loved everything about it. The fact that you could never perfect it, the fact that you could always find better competition to play against, that just drove me. I loved the practice time in the driveway and going out and clearing the snow off the driveway to shoot hoops, and just that almost alone time, meditation time with myself, working on my game. I love that. And that I took that into college with me and really enjoyed playing competitively in college, although truth be known, I did not light it up in college even. But I'll tell you that the work ethic it took to actually become even capable of making a college team was looking back on it, pretty important to my development as an executive.
Yeah, I think, and we'll talk about that throughout, but I think is the skill set that athletes have. I mean, I was a runner in high school and college, and I got hurt in college my sophomore year, but a lot of what I take growing up, same thing. I mean, just the practice, the drive, and just everything that goes about it, the leadership that you develop as an athlete. So, fun question. Did you growing up want to be a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Absolutely. Didn't we all? I thought everybody wanted. Yeah, I'm not sure. Geez, it probably wasn't until junior year when I really started going up against some real talented kids that I figured out that there's no chance I was going to be a pro athlete. But absolutely, we're all in the drive, or at least basketball players always in the driveway, counting down 3, 2, 1, to win the NBA championship or college championship. Yeah, 100%. I love the thought of it. It drove me. Obviously, it didn't drive me hard enough, or I might have had a chance.
Well, I always joke, right? I say like I would have wanted to be a professional baseball player. I mean, Major League Baseball, that would have been my sport, but unfortunately, talent wasn't there. So do what we're doing today here.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you let's talk about college. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is kind of ultimately the transition out of sports. But when you were in college, or maybe not even when you were there, because I know things have changed, or maybe what you see today, did the schools or your school in particular make an effort to kind of educate the athletes, like, hey, once this is over, here's some of the other things you should look at?
No, not to my knowledge. Yeah, I think that's a gap in the system a little bit, that athletes have an awesome tenacity and awesome work ethic. That's what caused them to get there. That being said, a lot of, especially the higher level athletes, the Division I athletes, it's a job, right? It becomes an identity for them. Place with business owners and founders too, but maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I think there's a lack of empathy, if you will, or a lack of awareness from the school standpoint of what it actually took to become a Division I athlete. It takes tunnel vision, commitment, work ethic, deterministic behavior, vision, commitment, and it's a job.
Yeah.
the job probably for, I bet you, boy, 4 years in college plus another 8 to 10, probably, 15 years with a single pursuit to become a Division I athlete and or pro athlete.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of May, it all comes to an end.
Yeah.
So what do we expect to happen? Right. I mean, what is the NCAA? The NCAA has a commercial they used to run. It says 99% of all college athletes will go pro in something other than their sport.
Yeah.
It's a very, very impactful advertisement, but it stops at the advertising level. I don't see a lot of people out there reaching out to the athletes and say, hey, by the way, you're going to graduate. Your identity has been your sport for a very long time. That's where you got your publicity. That's where you got your self-esteem fed. That's where you got your ego fed. And now that's going to be gone. You better be ready for it. And this is how we can get you ready for it. I'm not aware that that's happening at all.
Right. No, I agree with you. And I mean, I think some schools are trying to start doing. I mean, one of the things we've talked about doing is kind of going in almost like a SWAT team approach where we would, sit down with the athletic department and try to help them develop curriculum, whether it's, again, the athlete transition coaches, the mental side of it or financial side of it, but working together with them to not only help their current athletes, but help the alumni athletes as well. And I think some of the schools, they talk about it, but there's definitely more of a need for it. So one of the other areas too, we always talk about, and again, the Alumni Direct being that type of platform, helping alumni network and connect together. When you were at Union, did you see athletes coming back, and not just the we talked a little offline, not just the golf tournaments, but coming back and actually working or helping athletes out?
A little bit. Handedly, I'm not sure who initiated that contact. I don't know if it was the school reaching out to the athlete or the athlete reaching back to the school, but I can tell you this, Rob, that I have tried to do that with my schools that I wanted to commit to, and I've had lukewarm success. Union College, I came back. Part of my story is our family lost a son to fentanyl morphine overdose in 2016, our oldest son, Marcus.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to give back to Union College because my Union College experience was so good. And I wrote an article for their alumni magazine. And so that was one good experience. And then I've had numerous other experiences where I've tried to give back and been completely resisted. But go to other schools and be accepted. So it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, it's hard to be a prophet in your own land. That's really true. Like the people around us, family members, friends, they see us as these young kids, right? That they knew, back when. Well, now we've grown into, successful adults. And now that we're ready to give back, they don't see us in that with that perspective all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times you hear, people talk about their experience with alumni relations, and a lot of it's about fundraising. And but there's so many other areas like you just brought up. I mean, I know for me, I was a president of my alumni club for many years, and you don't get paid for that. But the idea is to bring your alumni together and seeing what you can do to help them out. So it's hopefully more and more schools will start looking at that, because it seems like across the board, not only athletes but alumni in general seem to be forgotten unless they're famous people or giving a lot of money back, to their programs.
Yeah, and what I like about what you just said, Rob, is, and I see this in a lot of the work I do relative to networking. If referrals, we all know referrals are huge in business, right? Either getting customers or finding new potential customers. The great thing, there are cultures. Like a school has a culture, right?
Right.
A fraternity within that school has a culture. A basketball team has a culture. A running team has a culture. A track team has a culture, right? So if you, as an alumni, come back, you can really quickly identify with certain cultures within that school, right? And it's a quick and easier way to give a referral with a lot more confidence.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have a sense of who that person is because that's who you were. Right. So you can give that referral. Would you recommend this person to a friend or colleague? Well, yeah. Oh, how come? well, look, I went to the same school, we were on the same team, we had the same coach, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah. It's true, especially like when, I always relate to being in a faraway market from your school. And, when you meet a fellow alumni, that first inclination, like, hey, how can I help you? I mean, it's great. I also talk about too, like if you're from a job perspective, let's say if you're a hiring company, and I always say if I'm looking at 5 different candidates, they all have the same credential, but one went to Delaware, I would hire the Delaware person. And I think most people think the same way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, trust is born out of relatability, familiarity, and vulnerability, right? So, if you can establish that early, then the relationship will go pretty well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the hot topics right now is NIL, name, image, likeness. And back when we were playing sports, you and I, it didn't exist. And I've talked to former NFL guys that are like, yeah, gosh, Rob, I wish it was that way when I was playing. But give me your thoughts. I guess both the positives and the negatives of it.
Look, I think it's really, really positive, and not enough people are talking about it. Alumni Direct, I love the message there, but the athletes to entrepreneurs is really interesting, right? This opportunity for the athlete might actually reverse that, right? We call them student athletes.
Right.
Okay, got it. Well, now are they really entrepreneurs that happen to be athletes and students? Right? I think all of us have to have this perspective of self-responsibility and self-accountability. Right. And as an athlete, we know this. We know that nobody makes us better. Nobody makes us practice hard. Nobody makes us give 100% effort except us.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's follow that back to its base level. You are responsible for your own name, image, and likeness. The power has been taken from the big corporations in a lot of ways, the people that controlled mass media, the people that controlled channels to market distribution, right? We're seeing the benefits of that through Netflix. Right. All these creative people now are creating all these ridiculously great series. Well, those were always available before. They just were controlled by a small number of people. Well, now the power is with the athlete. The power is with the entrepreneur. And we're just not talking about it enough. And you're not going to talk about it at the masses. Why? Because the masses are losing, the old guards losing power.
Yeah.
Right. Look at the PGA. Look what's going on at the PGA. Right. They said they couldn't do some of this name, image, likeness stuff. Right. They couldn't do a lot of stuff. Phil Mickelson and the guys got pissed and said, look, we're going somewhere else. And now they're doing everything. Now they're doing everything that was pissing Phil and the live guys off,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You're right. And I like that. That's an interesting take because you're right. They are like entrepreneurs. I mean, I think like one of the guys I talked to, he was all for it. But his only concern, and this is the concern that comes across, is just the whole, let's say the financial literacy part. But this is really with any young person, doesn't have to just be an athlete, but all of a sudden coming up and getting this windfall of money and then not realizing, okay, well, hey, you got to pay taxes on it or you have to invest it. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were just talking about how, all of a sudden they're getting like, somebody's, even if it's a little $2-3 grand a month in an NIL deal, that all of a sudden now some of their financial aid goes away. And then they, this athlete was spending all this money, having a good time with his friends and all that. And then realizing, I don't have any money left. I got to pay taxes. So that's the one thing, but I think it sounds like there's companies out there trying to educate on that.
There are, but they're few and far between also. And this financial literacy problem isn't just with the athlete. This is adults. This is like, I run into people every day that just don't understand the compound, the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest, right? So if you have an athlete, let's say that made a windfall with name, image, and likeness, and was able to put 50 grand away, and then just a few thousand a year after that, they'd be multimillionaires by the time they're 65.
Yeah.
Right. No one's teaching that. Right. No one's teaching the compounding value of interest and how a very, very big windfall of money, 50 grand, 100 grand invested at 10% over a period of 40 years, how awesome that'll be for them and their family.
Yeah.
It just takes a little discipline and knowledge. Right. But yeah, there's huge opportunity out here for these athletes that have a good mind about them with name, image, and likeness. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's and I guess it's exciting. It's giving the opportunities. I mean, like everything is the pros and the cons of it, but yeah, I think it's something that's worked. So let's talk a little bit about your transition out of playing college basketball. Was it an easy transition for you, knowing like, hey, I'm going into the business world, or were there some challenges?
Yeah, it was easy from the perspective of I knew pretty early, like in college, that I wasn't going anywhere after college. It was hard from the perspective of basketball is still something I love to do even today, right? So I remember in my, when I was 22, 23, I was playing 5, 6 days a week. So I never left basketball. I was still playing almost every single day. So, and to this day, still play competitively and enjoy the hell out of it for lots of reasons. And so I think for me, not being a Division I athlete, not having, my dreams were kind of obviously not going to happen pretty early. It was probably easier than it is for some of the more elite athletes.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I put myself in the same realm. I mean, I was a good runner, but I wasn't the kind of elite runner that was going to go to the Olympics or anything like that. And so, I was already thinking ahead and the classes. But again, we see a lot of these athletes, especially the ones, the elite athletes that might have a shot at professional sports, just being zoned in on that and then not looking at some of the other areas that might affect them. So you go into you transition out and you kind of talk a little about your journey through corporate America.
I think probably the biggest aha moment for me, as it would relate to the audience we're trying to reach here today, Rob, was my time at General Electric. Right. So I went to GE after finishing business school. And the reason I went to GE is you get brainwashed in business school that GE's a leadership mecca, right? That's where the great leaders go. That's where the great leaders come from. And I wanted to see how strong a leader I was and how strong a leader I could be. So I got there. And one of the interesting takeaways for me is we recruited from the elite athlete pool of candidates. So if someone demonstrated either a real strong talent in a sport and or had been in the military, GE wanted them. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's some other companies out there, like you start digging into that, they're all about recruiting the athletes. And I guess, we talked a little bit about this, but how do you, like, I guess the reasoning they're looking at it is that whole athlete skill set. So maybe talk a little bit about that and how, that your athlete mindset and skill set, translates into companies like GE looking for athletes.
Yeah, if you look at let's say top 10 attributes that employees are looking for today, it's going to be the ability to work within teams, it's communication, it's collaboration, it's resilience, it's emotional processing, right? It's all these things that have to happen for you to become a college athlete. Like, if you don't have those attributes, you cannot succeed on a team in a college environment, right? So you may, right, if you get lucky, but the truth is you have a higher probability of having those attributes at the end of your college career than maybe a lot of people that hadn't been in college sports.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right. And that's what they're seeing. And everybody that I talked to, just they we had one guy on, he was a football player in college. And after that, he went on to be a CEO, very successful CEO for some big companies. But he said the same thing you're saying. It's just imploring athletes is just don't just get zoned in on like, hey, I was a football player. What am I doing in my life now? Like, look at the attributes and the skill sets that you have and see how that can, parlay into the business world or entrepreneurship.
Yeah, what I encourage people to do in my coaching practice is if you want something in your life, study the elite people that are already doing it, right? So like if I were an athlete graduating college and I knew my pro career was over, I'd start using Chat GPT or Google, and I'd start asking, who are the CEOs or entrepreneurs that had successful college careers, right? And I'd go get a list of 20, 50, 100 people like Magic Johnson or Shaquille O'Neal that have parlayed their college sports success and even pro sports success into huge entrepreneurial success, right? I'd start stacking evidence. One of the things I work with all my people on is the brain is a funny thing. If you ask it bad questions, it has to answer them. It's the best Google machine on earth. So if you ask your brain, why am I a dumbass? It has to answer the question. It'll give you all kinds of evidence of why you're a dumbass, right? By the same token, if you ask, how can I use my sports skills, sports attributes to accelerate my business career? The brain will answer that question too, right? It'll spit out determination, resilience, work ethic, teamwork, communication, collaboration. Like it has to answer the questions you ask it. So, for everybody, athlete or not athlete, I'd say, look, get in the habit of asking empowering questions because your brain will start looking to answer them and the brain will look for evidence to support the question.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice, and you kind of I always ask that the different nuggets, and that's something that people should look into. It's an interesting perspective. So fast forward, so you've kind of you went through that business career, and then you've alluded to a little bit, but talk about some of the things that you're doing today with your coaching.
So every leader of a business struggles with the same thing the rest of us do. They wonder, am I doing the right thing as a leader of this business? Am I doing the right thing as a CEO of this business? When is somebody going to figure out that I don't have all the answers? Right? These are all questions that every human asks, but we think we're the only ones.
Right.
I got news for you. Every leader asks them. Like the brain works a certain way. It's biological. It's neuroscience. And we need to teach people this. Like we're not alone in our challenges and our lack of confidence and our insecurities, right? The world is full of us. It's just we're not in the habit of talking about it openly. And the other thing, you and I talked offline, it was interesting. Some athletes struggle when they move from an identity as an athlete to an identity as someone being in the workforce, an entrepreneur or a business leader, or even an employee for somebody else. CEOs struggle with that too. Most entrepreneurs, they start their business 30, 35, 40 years later. They think they want to go retire. They don't know what the hell to do. Right? They don't know what to do. Their identity is their business. They are their business. The business is them. So everything that these committed, dedicated athletes go through at a young age, I'm watching CEOs and owners go through at a later age because they have asked themselves, hey, what's next for me? How do I use the skills I built up for 35, 40 years for my next phase of life? Right? So helping them ask the better question always gives better answers.
That's interesting. I wonder how it would correlate if, as an athlete, you do ask the questions, you have a successful transition out of sports and would you think differently when you're at that level? So in other words, like what you just said, like, the CEO could be asked the same thing. What am I doing in my life? I've been a CEO for however long. Or like, I wonder if that person was an athlete and went through that transition, if they would feel the same way. I mean, do you have any kind of like case studies of that, even like yourself included, where it might have been a different thought process because you went through it before?
Well, I'm going through it now. Like I'm in the middle of it, right? I'm working too many hours, and part of the reason I'm working too many hours is I haven't planned ahead,
right,
to what hobbies I should be committing time to, right? So, everybody goes through it. The question is, if I'm not working, what should I be doing? What can I be doing with my time that's productive? And I'm actively, for myself, with my coaches, trying to find answers to that.
Yeah, coaches need coaches too, right?
Coaches need coaches. I got a bunch of them, believe me.
It's important to have them. So how do people find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, obviously, under Scott Gibbs. The business, I have two primary businesses. One is through a company called Vistage, which is the largest CEO coach. And then the other is kind of my passion job, and that's www.youracresofdiamonds.com. And that's a business where we are really peeling back what causes stress and anxiety, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and overwhelm in people. For example, most people today believe stress and anxiety is just part of life. We have tools and processes and apps that we use that show people that stress and anxiety doesn't have to be part of anybody's life. Like very, very small portion. And we're having great success. Hundreds of people have gone through the programs now. And, you know, people ask, well, give me an example. And I say, okay, you and I can do it. Do you like skydiving, Rob?
I'd be terrified.
All right. I love skydiving. So skydiving isn't the stress, right? It's your perception of skydiving that's causing you stress.
Right.
I have a different story about skydiving. Skydiving is one of the last activities I did with my son, Marcus, before he died. That's a good story for me. That's why I love skydiving, right? You have a different story. So skydiving itself has no stress. It's just the event. Our stories create stress, right? Some people are afraid of dogs. How come? Well, they have a different story about dogs than I do, right? So this is not being taught to people. And with youracresofdiamonds.com, we're actively training people both in business and in college and a little bit of high school, but mostly college and above, on how to have a stronger emotional processing capability, stronger emotional resilience, so that we can live a more confident and joyful life.
That's great. Definitely I want to check it out. You know, everybody else needs to check it out as well. That's and it's good when you get into those passion projects. And you're right. It's interesting some of the things you talk about. Like I was talking to somebody and they were talking about like being in an industry or like being a specific company. Like years back talking about like the railroads, like the railroads were, okay, we're railroads, but they were in the transportation business, or like, you know, there's just people need to, you know, kind of broaden and look at the different side of that. So, well, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate all the time. You can find us at alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, and follow the show. I think we really want to make an impact in helping athletes as they transition out of sports, just knowing that there's a lot of things that they can do and to utilize their skill sets. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.